So Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is finally out. I've been looking forward to this game. It's currently out on the Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and PC. I'm playing it currently on the Xbox One X, and Bandai was kind enough to send over a code on Thursday, so I got a bit of a head start. I'm roughly 15 hours into the game now, and I'm up to the point where the androids are about to show up, so I've played completely through the Saiyan saga, and I've played through the Frieza saga at this point. So I wanted to give my impressions and my thoughts so far on the game. Now, after seeing this game unveiled last year, I believe, they talked about it being an RPG, and then they talked about it being an action-adventure RPG, and then they showed the gameplay, and I said, well, that's not exactly what I was hoping to see. Like, I was kind of thinking more along the lines of, like, Attack of the Saiyans from the DS that was just a straight turn-based RPG, and then it turned more into, like, Legacy of Goku, which isn't necessarily bad, but then it turned into Xenoverse. So we've kind of made this journey from traditional RPG that I was hoping for all the way to more of an arena-style beat-em-up game with some key blasts, right? But it does span 4 different sagas, so this is a long game. Like I said, I'm 15 hours in, and I believe I'm roughly halfway through the game, which for, I mean, a lot of times, 15 hours is an entire game. Well, this game looks to be 30 to 40 hours just for the main story, and based on what I've played, I think that is correct, and they've said that there is upwards of 80 hours of content here if you do all of the side stuff, and yeah, there's a lot of side stuff. Like, there's a lot of stuff I have not done yet that is on the map, and some of the side quests that I've kind of skipped over as I've gone along, just trying to get through and see some of the set pieces and the cutscenes so I can make a determination on the storytelling. So if you take longer and explore more, it might take you 20 hours to get to the point that I am now. Now, looking at Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, I think this game is a step in the right direction, all right? And we'll talk about why that is. But I think there is still quite a bit of work and a ways to go with this franchise, and I hope they eventually get there. But I want to talk about some of the good things with the game, some of the bad things, some of the things I want to see them improve, and where I hope they go from here. So starting off, you play as Goku. Surprise, right? And it does start off basically with Raditz appearing on Earth to kick off the Saiyan saga. And for the most part, they start you off with traversal. And basically, in this game, you do traverse an open world map that they give you access to occasionally. Sometimes they have several events back to back to back to back, and you don't necessarily fly around the open world as much. You do have kind of a set world that you can go to, but then you can also fast travel to other pieces. So at certain points, yes, there is a lot of stuff to look around with, but when you start traversal, they have orbs that are all over the place that you would go around and collect. You'll notice them immediately while you're flying around, and those orbs are something you want to collect. But the issue I have here is more about the controls, and basically you move around with the left stick as usual, but in order to ascend and descend, you would use right trigger and right bumper for me on the Xbox controller, and it feels very awkward. The right stick is mostly just used for the camera, not necessarily for moving your actual flight up and down. I think I would have preferred that. I believe they just want you to be able to look around with the right stick and not necessarily control your up and down movement, which it just feels weird. Like, when you're flying around like that, it's just a strange feel. It's very awkward, and it's not something I've really been able to get used to as much for being more accurate with my flying, and unfortunately, that's just the controls they have set up. But I'll admit, I did enjoy flying around and collecting the orbs at first. It became a little annoying, but there are some good rewards for collecting the orbs, and they have some fun things, like they have paths set up that will blast you forward and you'll try to collect as many as you can as you go. They have some segments where it's timed and they'll flip a switch and a bunch of orbs will be in front of you, and you try to basically maneuver an obstacle course trying to collect as many as you can, and then at the end of it there's a rainbow orb or reward that'll give you a bunch as well. So they have some stuff set up, but for the most part you're flying around, you're collecting orbs, and a lot of times they'll even be kind of on the way to your destination. So of course your first task is to go take down Raditz, who has taken Gohan, and this kind of leads us into the gameplay itself, which is the fighting. The fighting is the main component of this game that everything builds around, and for the most part it's very much like Xenoverse. So if you play Xenoverse, you kind of know what you're getting into here. And I actually would have fun with the Xenoverse combat at times because it was online multiplayer. It would have some jankiness to it, right? Like someone might knock somebody out of the way while you're doing a combo as well, and it would mess stuff up. There's less of that here. You do have some support characters that you can control and basically tell them, hey, use this key blast, use this super move, go ahead and do that, and then I'll hit them here. And you try to work together with them, right? And it's less unpredictable, right? Because you can control them and tell them what to do, and that does help. But for the most part, it's very much a single-player Xenoverse style game. You have your typical physical attacks that you can turn into combos, you have your key blasts, you have your super moves. All of that does work together, and I actually enjoy the combat, but it does get to a point where it can become kind of stale, and that is, I think, an issue. Now, you do change between characters, so you can control other characters, but not every character is the issue here. Like, I've played as Vegeta, I've played as Gohan, I've played as Piccolo, so there is some variety. I think the most variety I've seen so far was Trunks, and that's probably because he had a sword, and he does use that, at least from what I've played so far in the combat. Specifically when he's fighting Mecha Frieza, you do have some moves where he'll use the sword, which is pretty cool. So then, of course, you take down Raditz. Goku goes to the afterlife. I'm sorry, he goes to another dimension. Thanks, Ocean. And at that point, you're, of course, off and running with the rest of the story. There's not a lot of surprises here, and that's kind of been the issue I've had. So far, nothing has surprised me when it comes to side quests. It's like I was hoping there'd be a bit more here, some more story to add to it. Nothing like that. It's very, very traditional. It's the same story we've been playing for a while now, in the past couple decades in Dragon Ball video games, and they didn't really take any chances, and that is one issue I'm having. It feels very safe overall. But hey, if you've never really gotten into Dragon Ball Z at all, you can at least experience the story from start to finish through these 4 different sagas and get the overall idea of what's going on. I don't think it's a great way to experience the story. I think if this is your first time you play through it and you're like, oh, that was cool, I would still go back and watch the anime itself, because there is a lot of stuff. It's going to sound crazy because I just said it's a 40-hour story. There is a lot of stuff that gets left out here. And I think a lot of that has to do with them skating the line between a teen and mature rating, where they don't want it to be too violent. Like, I thought that Nicktoons edit was bad when it comes to, obviously, some of the stuff they have to cut out. This is up there. I'm gonna be honest. They cut out a lot of the violent bits in Dragon Ball Z while also trying to recreate it. And it's very strange because in one scene, they'll show Tien get his arm punched off, right? But then in another scene, they will barely show Frieza get cut up. Like, barely. Oh, man. It's like, it was so, like, they were so scared to show that, it seemed. And it is that teen rating that they are trying to keep. And unfortunately, Dragon Ball Z just is not really a teen rated game. Like, it's just, if you show some of those scenes, it will probably become mature rated, and they don't want to do that. So a lot of the times, parts of the story are just outright just left out. Like Frieza and Nail. That was a pretty important scene to show how vicious Frieza is, and really the resolve of Nail to protect the people around him. And unfortunately, neither character got their shine in that scene because they just outright skipped it. Like, completely. Whether it's Frieza appearing in front of a Namek village, and those were pretty violent scenes with Doria absolutely wrecking some of the different Namek characters. Yeah, he just punches one of them, and that was the end of the scene in this game. It's odd because then they have scenes where it's really well done. When Vegeta took out Kui, that was really, really well done. It looked great. It looked so good. But then they'll cut to a scene where visually it looks like a high-definition PS2 game, and it becomes very obvious that some scenes had a lot of time spent on them, and other ones, it feels like they just were like, well, we got to push this out now. And I guess that kind of comes back to the visuals. The visuals are average at best, I would say. And then like I said, there are some scenes where it just looks really bad, and then there are others where it looks really good. It's so all over the place to where when the visuals become bad, it's jarring. And I'm not really sure why that is. If I really had to sit down and look at it, I almost wonder if they spread themselves too thin trying to cover too much stuff from the Dragon Ball Z story in one game. I almost wonder if they sat down and focused on one saga or 2 sagas rather than try to do 4. If that would have made things a bit easier on them. I understand they want to tell the story from the beginning, but they also want to have a Super Saiyan or multiple Super Saiyans probably in it, because that helps obviously with marketing and all of that. I almost wonder if that's what they wanted to do, but they realized that it would just be a lot. I mean, that's a lot of story to cover in one game. Now, this is, of course, an RPG. They stress that heavily. This is an action-adventure RPG. So we have the action and the fighting. We have the adventure and the traversal and looking around a map with side quests and some different things to collect there. So let's talk about the RPG elements. And this is another part where I feel like they try to do a little too much and it feels like they spread themselves thin. But if you are someone who really enjoys collecting and being a completionist, this is right up your alley and you're going to get a lot of time out of it. So you have your traditional leveling, you gain experience, you level up, and you can see your power level, by the way, your fighting power. So that'll be interesting to see if there are any arguments around that one, because even into the Android Saga, I can still see the battle power, the power levels in the millions right now for like Vegeta and Piccolo and everyone. So again, that'll cause some conversation, I'm sure. So you have your typical leveling that, of course, increases your HP, your ki, and your attack power, all of that. And then aside from there, you also have a full skill tree that will affect your super attacks, your moves, and any passive abilities like being able to break guard better or being able to stun your enemies better. So there are different things in this skill tree that you work up, and in order to really go through that skill tree, you collect those orbs. Those orbs are basically currency in the skill tree that you spend to move from top to bottom, and then at the bottom, of course, are the stronger abilities that you get, like a Final Flash or Instant Transmission, Kamea Wave, any of that. And then at the top, you'll start with some of the basics. So they do give you a reason to go around and collect these different orbs, and then you do get to points where you have to go to a training ground to attain some of the other super attacks. So a lot of stuff to do in this move, I'll say, skill tree. And then next to that, so we have our typical leveling, we have our super attack and move skill tree, and then we have the community board. So you kind of see what I'm saying here. I feel like they're spreading themselves a little thin with this, but the community board is where you gain different allies through these emblems. You place them on these little maps that kind of remind me of maps from Budokai 2 almost, where we kind of move around that. But you place the different characters down, they link together, and they will have effects on different things outside of and inside of battle. So let's say you want to work on your ability in battle when you're fighting, you would build up your Z Fighters category. Let's say you want to build up the ability to do cooking, which will boost your attack power and your defensive power. Temporarily going into a fight, you would work on your cooking alongside Chi-Chi. So there is a lot of different things to do there, and there are several categories that you build up. And then on top of that, okay, there's a bit more. We then level up each different individual emblem for different characters through means of items that you collect while you're playing. So we have leveling for each emblem. We have leveling for each category and placement of emblem that do different ties. We then have a collection of orbs that build up a skill tree that you also need to do training grounds to help build up. And then you have traditional leveling, building up your HP, your ki, and your fighting power. Yeah, there's a lot of RPG stuff here. And if you think what I just said with all that's confusing, they show you the community board and then they kind of just go, yeah, good luck. I'll admit it's overwhelming at first. As you play around with it, though, you start to figure it out, of course. And it's not as bad now, but I do kind of look at the community board, I look at the skill tree for your moves and your leveling, and I almost wonder, would it have been better if they just did typical leveling and then just a standard skill tree with all kinds of cool passives and a few moves that you get as you gain skill points from maybe just doing side quests and other things? Do they really need to have all of this other stuff around it? I don't necessarily think so, but I do see the value there for people who want to be completionists and want to build up certain character builds and other things. Yes, there is a lot of customization here, so that's actually pretty cool. So now the question is going to be, if you've never played Dragon Ball Z, should you get into this game? Should you pick this game up for $60? And you know what? I have to say, Probably not. I think this game is mostly just going to appeal to Dragon Ball Z fans. And even some of them might say, well, I've seen this story enough. I think I'm ready to move on. And if that is the case and you're not that interested in those 4 sagas, even seeing them retold on newer machines or anything, yeah, you probably can move on from this one. But I do think there is at least a fun game to play. Like, I've had fun in my 15 hours playing it, but I do at times kind of go, that's too bad, or they could have done this better. But I'm still having fun enough to continue playing through it. And I think there are people who enjoy the Dragon Ball Z lore and the franchise that will have fun with this game. And to a degree, you can get a general idea of the story playing through this, but I don't think this should be the first and absolute entry into the story. I think if you play this and is the first entry you've seen for Dragon Ball Z, you gotta go watch some of the anime to get more of the story. And that's the most unfortunate part, because I thought from a 40-hour quote-unquote RPG, action-adventure RPG, there would be better storytelling from cutscenes for this game, and at times it feels a bit rushed. And I said I think this is a step in the right direction for Dragon Ball Z in general in terms of video games. And what I mean by that is I like that they are exploring more so the idea of an action-adventure RPG game that is strictly single-player. And I would like to see them work more and more towards what would, I guess, be a bigger budget, more focused Dragon Ball Z game. I think there's a lot of potential there when it comes to storytelling in Dragon Ball Z for video games, and I hope they continue to pursue that and work off of this, and maybe just work more or less to innovate or pick out one saga or even work towards Dragon Ball Super, because I do see the potential here, and I hope that's something they continue with. But let me know what you guys think about Dragon Ball Z Kakarot so far. Like I said, I'm enjoying my time with it, but there's just so much that I can see here that they could do better, and I just see so much potential with this. Let me know what you guys think down below. Make sure you guys like the video on the way out if you enjoyed it, dislike it if not, and I'll see you guys next time.